Welcome back to the E3 Shack News booth here at the E3 Esports Zone 2019, powered by Subnation, sponsored by HyperX. And, you know, we're here with pretty much an all-star panel of esports muckety mucks and legends, and maybe young kids, young guns that have a bright young future ahead of them that makes me jealous. It made me start at over 30 league. So I'm just gonna have you go down here because we have a lot of guests. Introduce yourself, tell everyone where you're from. So, I don't know, you guys probably know this guy. His name's Fatal1ty.
Thank you very much. My nickname is obviously Fatal1ty. I've been a 12-time world champion at playing FPS shooters, games like Quake, Doom, Unreal Tournament, all the games that we loved back in the 90s and early 2000s in esports. I'm here as the co-founder and chief gaming officer of ReadyUp. Our goal is to help connect the esports world with listing events, listing tournaments online, and also creating team management tools for gamers out there.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Britanni Johnson. You've probably seen me on multiple things. I have done character work on Borderlands, as well as I've worked on the business side. I do a lot of esports hosting, shoutcasting, strategy consultant, league operations, influencer marketing, you name it.
My name is Jaden James, and I am a professional PUBG player for Ghost Gaming, and I am currently 17 years old, so I'm here as a brand new esports player. Yeah, brand new.
Is this your first E3?
Yeah, actually, you have to be 17 to get in, so this is my first eligible year. Yeah.
We could have snuck you in like a crate on day one or something.
I'm Dan Hamill. I go by Greenskull online, and I'm kind of it's weird to think of it, but an old guard content creator making videos on YouTube before YouTube was a thing. I had to find these weird sites to upload to and stuff. So I've just been, I've been a big Halo guy, big fan of Halo. Woo. A lot of Halo content. Yeah, Halo, let's go. It's a thing. Halo Infinite, woo.
Oh, big fan of Halo.
It's great, it's a thing. I am also on the ReadyUp team, and I help run the content and community with this guy.
Yeah, so thanks for the intro. I'm Dave Troop, go by Throoper online. I cast Halo, Overwatch, a bunch of different FPS titles, as well as League of Legends. And I work on the content and community team here with Dan and with John, obviously. And I also host a bunch of different podcasts for like Fortnite and other games like that with UGC.
Awesome. So we're going to kind of just do a panel format here. I'm going to throw some questions. If you don't feel like answering, we can pass it down the line to someone else. So I think people know your origin story, right? So maybe we'll skip you. He's a legend. He's great at Quake, whatever. No, what are some key things? He could kill me in Quake right now.
How many people I had to kill to get here?
How many people have you killed?
I can add one more.
Okay, so what were some key things that you did to get you into this position that you're in? Because you've gone beyond the old guard. Now you're creating a service to help other people get into esports. Talk about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, being a part of the esports world for a long time, I've seen it from kind of the infant stage where, it was really hard to find out about tournaments online. You had to scour forums and scour websites and like, oh, there's a tournament in Australia next month. Like, okay, I'll go there. They're giving away $5,000. I mean, it's $3,000 flight, $2,000 profit. I got to go to Australia, So that's like, finding out about those kind of events was very hard back when I played.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of inspired the story of ReadyUp was, for people that want to get into esports, it's our goal is to make it easier for the masses to find out information. So if you want to go professional, say in Fortnite, well, there's qualifiers. How do you find out about the qualifiers? So ReadyUp is going to be that kind of path to pro, listing events, helping people be more engaged in the games, which helps bring more revenue for the publishers and for the tournament organizers. And obviously it fills the need for the player that I want to go play and go pro.
That makes a lot of sense. I can just speak from our website standpoint. Creating guides for how to do whatever has been the business for us. So you've definitely found like a slice of the internet that is underserved. There's like a lot of people that have trouble finding that. There's not very well curated lists of tournaments, and it's not always comprehensive. There'll be something that's Halo focused, or there'll be something that's Quake focused, So no, I think this makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
So, Brittany, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Well, I was in college when we started working on Borderlands 1. And from there, I continued when we worked on Borderlands 2, moved to LA, would continue doing talent stuff. I would guest host on a lot of events or different channels, Machinima, Maker, G4 even, and would always be asked back to do more. And I kind of just kept building a network and building a network. And I was always a gamer myself, so I was familiar with all the new games that were coming out. I could speak to that, actually, be knowledgeable and speak to whoever I was with. And so that just led to being able to easy transition into the esports world and to being a personality, not only character work or voiceover, but even on the business side. So.
Yeah, and to this young man here, I have a question for you, because you're kind of breaking out. You've had your breakout year in esports. So, how consistent and committed were you before you made it? Like, what were you doing every day to get yourself to this point?
So before, for literally my whole life, I've been super involved, like watching esports, going to esports events, trying to convince my parents to let me go to esports events, and I was trying to show my parents esports. So I just been grinding, trying to get better at video games, and I've always, over the years, I've been getting better and better and better, and just trying to go to all these different events that I could, and just try and build a network. A lot of people like my story because I'm young, and I don't act like it, but I am a little kid, so everyone is impressed when I can go and network professionally. But to become a PUBG professional player, it was just a lot of connections. Is that how you get tryouts for teams, and then people witness that you were actually really good at the game, and that's how you become pro, pretty much.
That's great. Anyone else have, if you have an answer to those questions too, like before you made it, especially in content creation, that kind of grind, you have to have that schedule, you have to foster your own community. You talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's community-wise, back then, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have social medias.
Back in my day.
Yeah, back in my day, we had forums and boards online, right? And it's funny now to see how that trend's changed, right? Everybody has a brand now. That's something that I never saw coming, right? Back then it was, if someone has a logo online, oh, who's this person? Like, that's interesting. Like, they have some crazy story to tell, and, they do all these wild things. Now, you have to have your own brand, right? So this entire transition from forums and just having more long-winded posts to each other to having your own pedestal and having to rise above others with your own pedestal has just been a huge, huge shift. And so, yeah, for me, it's a lot of forums. It's a big thing, managing forums, interacting on forums, and meeting people that way. People on the internet are not that weird all the time, right? Like, I can meet them, like mom and dad, I swear. Like, these people online are cool, believe me, right? And now I feel like it's a lot more accepted in society.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad you brought up this whole concept of, like, the rise of the influencer and social media and the empowerment of having your own brand. Because so many companies are now looking at people based on their reach, right? What sort of opportunities, and this is to everyone here, would you turn down as an influencer? And how do you balance your brand with those opportunities and those partnerships? And that's to whoever wants to jump on it.
You should go first on this one.
I think it depends on how you've built your brand and what brand speaks to you the most. Because you do a little bit of backwards engineering here. You say, what are the brands that reflect my lifestyle that I would want to work with? Let's say Audi. What is it that they look for? What is it that they can offer? And then what can I do to be palatable for them? If you're a Minecraft influencer, you're not going to be sponsored by Bud Light. So you can't just take in everything that comes to you. You have to be very strategic in what it is that you accept.
Well, I think the challenge is that companies who might not be gaming related, they're seeing Fortnite's success, and they're like, oh, we want some of that Fortnite money. So they have a lot of money, and they just kind of claw right into the industry with just throwing money at people. So you see these really unfortunate partnerships sometimes, and I think it's something that influencers go through where sometimes they do make a bad decision, and they just kind of have to live with it, right?
Well, I think something to touch on that point, it's interesting seeing this shift, especially with things like Twitch subscribing and the whole push for that. People are more and more willing to cheer on their content creators when they make money. That is honestly a new development. traditionally, especially on YouTube and such, you see someone do, oh, hey, this video is sponsored by whoever, right? And it would get disliked, and all the comments would be like, oh, what are you doing, you sellout, right? And now it's absolutely flipped. It's like, oh, no, let's get on a train. I want to donate. I'm going to encourage you guys to also donate to my person I watch, right? And it's the same with brands, right? People are just, they celebrate it now. So even if they don't necessarily fit the personality, you know they're making a living off it, and they can continue creating the content that you like watching.
And Jonathan, with when you came up, you had every computer company just like, hey there, guy. And you really did build your own brand. You had your products and everything. How did that feel at first when that first phone call came and said, hey, do you want a Fatal1ty brand headset, or do you want this? What were those meetings like? What did you think?
Well, actually, the very beginning of that, I started my company making basically the first large gaming mouse pad.
That's
and,
right.
I had my own logo, my own brand. I made the product. I distributed it to Europe, to Asia. Did a lot of distribution out of Kansas City, Missouri, where I was based at. And then a company came to me, and they offered me $200,000. And they were like, hey, we would like to sponsor you to wear our shirt and so forth. But I was kind of already on my path to make my own lifestyle brand for gamers.
Sure.
So I turned down the $200,000.
There you go.
And basically they were like, well, no one's ever turned down, this is the biggest deal in esports, like how are you turning it down? And I had a big vision for what Fatal1ty brand could be and so forth, and to make products for gamers. So I would actually help design the product with the manufacturers, because they don't know what they want to build for gamers. I'm living on the battlefield winning world championships, so they know, like, okay, well, he knows what he wants. So a month later, they came back, says, okay, Fatal1ty, we'll make Fatal1ty headphones, Fatal1ty sound cards, we'll make whatever you want, you help us design it, but it will be Fatal1ty product, and we'll pay you royalties on all the sales worldwide.
And that mouse pad was built out of necessity for yourself, right? Because you had super low sensitivity in your mouse, right?
Yeah, but it was basically common sense to have a large mouse pad, because when you're moving the mouse and you're shooting someone in the game, you would shoot them, but then you have to pick up the mouse and redo it. But with a bigger mouse pad, I could keep shooting, and I could do more damage, which allowed me to increase my performance by 5 or 10% against another competitor. So I'm always looking for an edge during my professional career to take them out and win the championship.
No, I think it's really interesting, because it's a lesson for everyone out there that if someone offers you $200,000, maybe it's not the right decision.
Don't take it.
Yeah.
Don't take
it.
it.
No,
it
don't
depends.
quote me on that. There might be, if they're going to buy a box of sand from you for $200K, definitely sell. But
It's about the big picture. It's what you want in the long term, view of what you think your career is and your trajectory is. So
absolutely.
And that all comes back to what you were saying is that company that's offering you the money something that you agree with your brand, like the previous question we asked? Is that something you believe in that company? Is that something you want on your resume, pretty much? Exactly.
So I kind of wanted to pivot to just, you had mentioned it earlier, like the era of social media, and when you are your brand, you have to be very wary of your online presence. Can we talk about just how you exist on the internet? How do you block out the negativity? And in the beginning, or I think that a lot of people in 2019 are seeing success because of their reach. So how do you balance your community engagement while not feeding the trolls?
It's certainly an interesting one. To be honest, you don't. I think a lot of people out there, it's easy to send that positive message out there. It's like, just like ignore it. But we're all human beings. You're still gonna read 200 positive comments and then one negative one, and that's the one that sticks with you. It's like, oh, did my hair actually look that bad today? Or it could be the simplest thing that doesn't matter, but it sticks with you. And so really, I don't think there's a right answer. I don't necessarily agree with not reading those comments, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of positive comments right there. That is your audience you're interacting with, but it takes a specific type of person to be able to even get to that point. And so you got to know what you're signing up for when this is happening, right? I know a lot of people that they don't expect it coming, and they rise to fame overnight and they can't handle it.
Yeah, I think internet anonymity just kind of lends itself to being mean. Like people, when you have Joe Blow 28 on Twitter, it doesn't really matter. But you're not going to see these people come up to you at E3 and tell that to your face. I think that's the thing about the internet that's just made humanity a lot meaner in the last 10 years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you don't have to see somebody eye to eye and you can kind of say these things, you can get away with a lot more. But also, with the negativity, you kind of have to treat it as almost like snake venom, where a tiny bit of it over a long period of time, you can kind of become immune to it, right? You can kind of like, okay, there's just going to be some people who aren't very nice, but you can't open up the tirade when you see something go wrong. You have to know, okay, do you know what? That actually didn't go so well. I'm going to avoid social media for a day or two and just let this pass, because if you give into all that, that's when you can get easily broken.
Well, no, an interesting point you made there is, sometimes, actually quite often, the negativity is actually coming from a place of passion. There are people who, they're generally these people are watching your content. Obviously, you have the typical trolls who come out there and just to say bad things. But there are people who they just don't know how to phrase it correctly, maybe, and they say, I hate this thing you just made. And it kind of comes from a place of love, as weird as that is. So, like, 'cause sometimes there's validity in those comments, and it's hard to see through it. But obviously, you said like when there's a lot of it, and like clearly, if there is a consensus among those comments, then maybe it's worth thinking about how you're presenting yourself as well, which is an interesting angle to look at it.
Yeah, and I will speak to this, and I'll keep it quick too. I mean, one of the first lessons I ever learned from Gearbox whenever I got into the space was do not read comments. However, you're going to. You just always have to remember, like, take it with a grain of salt. But a lot of these people don't think you're actually going to read what the chat says. They don't think you're going to actually read the comments.
Yeah,
so
they
then
say
if
in
you
third
ever
person,
do
they say
address
he,
it,
right?
if you
Or
ever
like
address
she.
it, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't think you were actually going to read it. And you're like, all right. And they're like, I didn't mean it. But at the same time, do no harm, because the reason why and the only way this will be as successful as it can be in this, and I mean that as the entire industry, esports, gaming, influencer, everything, is if it is inclusive. And if you do support your friends who are starting a company, you do support whatever streamer, don't be toxic, don't do harm.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wrap up relatively soon, but all of you are very hardworking people. There's just a grind. We all have to grind, right? And online, that a lot of the time you're in your house. A lot of people work remotely online. How do you unplug to avoid burnout? What is that? What is the mechanic that you use to stay fresh, stay motivated?
I think it's really important to find like a work-life balance, just like any other job. It's just the thing about esports is a lot of times this is your hobby. So you're playing video games is your hobby if that's what you're doing, esports or whatever. So you have to find some other hobby or activity to just unplug from everything. Like I know personally, just whether it's just going on a walk outside or just going to the beach for a couple hours, just unplugging or working out, or it's really important to have some sort of balance. It's not, it's hard because what you love to do is your job. So it's hard to.
Yeah, and then like content creation, where it's like, hey, give me more video, give me more video.
Well, yes, I wanted to feed off that, and you said like find another hobby, which I completely agree with. But even treating your job, which started as a hobby, and finding a way to bring that back to the hobby. I've actually talked to a lot of really big streamers who struggle with this, and they always are thankful for the advice. Is that you've got to find the time to not stream, but still play video games. Even if that's a game that you're like, you know what, I am never going to stream this game. I will only play this off stream. And you play with your friends. Like I have a nightly thing with like some of these guys, and like we play Halo together or whatever, and it's just like I turn off the stream, I turn off the recording software, we just hop into a party chat and we play. And that gets lost by almost everyone I know in content creation and streaming, and it's just find where you came from and revisit it on the daily.
Yeah, dude. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, I would say like one of my biggest secrets of when I was training, not to avoid burnout, when I was training for 7, 8, 9 years in competitive esports, was actually surrounding myself with people I just really enjoyed hanging out with in the first place.
Yeah.
The people that I flew in to live with me and train with me for the World Championships. When you're playing with people you like to hang out with anyways, it feels like half work, half play. And yeah, I ran 2 miles every day. I would do physical things to get me out there, get my endorphins up and so forth. But really the secret is just, surround yourself with people you like to be with anyways, and it'll be half work, half play.
No, that's really good advice.
I also think that if you treat it like a job in the sense that, you have your hours where you're on and you go in and from like 10 a.m. till like 6 p.m., you're doing work. But then, 7 o'clock comes, Doesn't matter if you haven't finished everything, you're turning that stuff off, you're hanging out with your friends, and you're getting away from it, and it's almost like a forced shutdown that you kind of have to do because, like you said, when you're at home, it's very easy to just kind of keep going and going and going. So you kind of have to have some self-discipline in that regard to go, this is the time where I need to take this time off, or tomorrow I'm going to be less productive. And if that keeps stacking, then you end up just completely burnt out.
I think, and I'll add to this, what you were saying too, working out. A lot of teams now are implementing this, and sure, you can sit there and scrim all day long, you can play games all day long, you can surround yourself by good people, but it's important to actually get outside, have a good diet, nutrition, work out. There's a lot, these teams are having nutritionists join and help these kids develop a good lifestyle beyond that, because it keeps you sharp in playing the game. It also keeps you happy and not burnt out.
That's actually something that the organization I'm with, Ghost Gaming, is they require that. They require you to go to the gym 3-4 times a week. They have a personal trainer. They have their meal plans. They help you with all that stuff, and it's actually a requirement. You can't just I'm not going to the gym today. It's like your obligation in your contract, so they want you to have that balance.
Yeah, I kind of want to just talk about where we're at in esports right now. You've been here since the beginning. There's just floods of money coming into the industry. And I look at something like OWL, for instance. Those teams cost like $25, $50 million to buy. Clearly, you've done very well, but you're doing ReadyUp. You're not doing an esports team. Can we talk about the economics of esports teams right now, and how it almost seems like the teams aren't making money, the players can make money, but at the same time, we've seen stuff in the past weeks with FaZe and Tfue where player contracts need to really kind of almost be regulated. Do you think that there's so much money in this scene right now that there almost needs to be a body that looks out for the community, looks out for its players, looks out for the people who are invested in it?
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of stuff that you just brought up there, but I'll try to unpack it a little bit. So essentially right now, like you said, the valuations on some of these teams are incredibly high, and a lot of the reason for that is it's seen as a long-term play, right? So people aren't expecting to make that $30 million back in a year or 5 years. Some of these, maybe not even 10 years. It's a much longer term play where, like the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, these franchises have gone from, a couple of $1 million, $10 million, 20 to $1 billion for some of the most successful ones. And I think that's the path that esports will eventually go. And just like with the NBA, the NHL, there's ticket revenue, there's merchandising, there's all those sorts of things. Right now, the sponsorships and the brand deals focus heavily on the players, and they themselves reap a lot of the value out of that, the benefits. But over time, that will be split in a way that makes sense to everybody. Right now, obviously, the Tfue situation you mentioned, the whole industry is trying to figure out what that balance still needs to look like. But I'm fairly confident that within the next 5 years or so, those economic models will be fairly flushed out. Everybody will have a solid understanding of how we progress forward, and then the businesses will be built in around that ecosystem to make sure that we get there.
I think there definitely needs to be some type of player union. There are a lot of lawyers out there right now who are looking out for the players in these situations. However, at the same time, you mentioned the whole Tfue situation. There is a fine line between pro player and influencer. And, these teams are bringing on influencers who also are in the pro scene. And also, they're just trying to diversify their stream of income in whatever way they can. So, you have your lifestyle brands, you have your influencer deals, you have your pro players. It's hard to define what that is whenever we're flying the plane and building it at the same time.
I think the trouble is that companies are just trying to buy cool as fast as possible. So that's driving the prices of teams up. It's driving contracts up. And like you said, it conflates what an influencer is and what an esports player is. I think that's a huge thing that we kind of need to address as a community.
Well, I think actually, Fatal1ty is the one who started this and kind of bringing them together, right? He was like the first person who was able to use his skill in a game to kind of create content and show everybody, hey, look at all this other stuff I can do. In terms of maybe it's making educational content, maybe it's making funny stuff. You can develop a brand, and we see this with NBA players and NFL players and those types of guys now, right? They stream some of them. They have their own sporting things or their shoe lines, this is something that as people become connected to these athletes and esports players, or whether that's a whole different conversation, but these names and personalities, they want to support them in everything they do.
I mean, I think it's great that the players are being taken care of and so forth. I've been hit up a lot, obviously, with all this situations going on. People are like, "You'd be a perfect guy to kind of represent this kind of thing," and so forth. When I was playing, we were repping ourselves as best we could, and companies wanted to sponsor us for nothing really in the back of the day. They get, oh, here's a graphic card, oh, here's a processor, oh, here's whatever, and that was like, I'm not gonna make a living off of this, like of free merchandise. So for me, my goal when I was coming up in the ranks and getting all my popularity and being on mainstream TV, my goal was to set the bar as high as possible, because I think pro players should be paid for being a professional gamer. I mean, if that's their career and that's their path, my goal is always set the bar as high as possible. And today, a lot of us are living the fruits of that in the space, and I think it's great that some people are taking a very good advantage of it and making millions.
Yeah, sure.
But I think it's just amazing all the outlets that are available now compared to where we were.
I mean, I'm sure Activision isn't complaining when people buy an Overwatch team, but no, I think that what we're seeing from the games industry perspective, where companies are trying to develop games and market them as esports before they're even out the door, like I said, it just feels like there's a gold rush going on, and there's a lot of very clumsy decisions being made. Not to throw too much shade, but we've seen Quake Champions kind of sputter. The player who won back-to-back Quake cons isn't even sponsored right now. And this was a league or an esport that just 2 years ago had 6-figure tournaments. So it just really feels like there's a danger to buying cool or to trying to market yourself as that. And very few games can get away with that.
Yeah, I think you have to go for the long-term plan, and I think if you try to do it like a 1-2 year deal like Quake Champions did it, I mean, it's unfortunate, but like I would have drawn it out a little bit more to have more of a story, so you can then launch the next Quake or whatever the deal is. So if you're getting into esports or whatnot, I think the long-term play is a much more beneficial for you for the longevity of your brand or event or whatever you're trying to do to be cool. It's not about instant, really fast, because you'll get burnt on those.
Yeah, and like even in Halo, right?
Yeah.
Halo 2, it's like that's the good esport right there. You know what I mean? That was my jam. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even they tried to. Yeah. Halo 5 was going to be an esport, you know, and it stumbled.
Well, I mean, specifically Halo. There, I mean, we can talk to this a lot. They pushed so hard to that direction that it isolated over half of the community who weren't into that as much, right? And so, people forget how young the industry, even as a whole, is, but especially esports, like especially modern esports, is still very young. There's a lot of lessons to be learned. Yes, that cool factor is still there, but I think at the end of the day, it's the genuineness will show through. There are obvious plays people will make that are like, you guys know what you're doing. And you can rip on Fortnite all you want. They're doing some amazing things. And it's obvious to even the most average gamer when they're tackling the esports the right way. And I think those are the companies and the initiatives that will shine over the long term.
But at the same time, they'll roll out a patch like the weekend before a tournament, and then all the pros are like, "Roar!"
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, again, there are lessons to be learned, and hopefully they are learning these lessons. I'd like to think they are. At the very least, other companies are.
PUBG, as a battle royale that's an esport, has been awesome to watch and awesome to see how they evolve, and they seem to really be listening to their players.
Yeah, I mean, video game industry is newer. Esports is newer, but Battle Royale is even newer. So there's still, it's a long-term thing. It's not something that's going to be perfected in a couple of years. They haven't had the time like Quake to over 20 years, 30 years to perfect how they do the esports. So I think they have to listen to the feedback, and there's a lot of decisions that have to be made, and they're going to mess up. But I think over the long term, it'll be more successful. It just takes time.
Well, unfortunately, I'm being told in my earbud, like a Secret Service agent, that we're out of time. We could talk about esports for a few hours, it seems. So ReadyUp, where can we find out more about you guys?
Yeah, you can just go to join.readyup.com.
Okay.
ReadyUp.com. We just launched the public beta on Monday, so we're very excited about that. And we're working on building some great things for helping communities grow. And obviously, I think it's very appealing for people to find out about events that they like to play in.
Awesome. And I really want to thank our whole panel. I know E3 is a very busy time for all of us. We appreciate you stopping by the ShackNews booth to chat. I think we all learned a lot about esports and about how to turn down $200,000. Stay tuned to Shack News Twitch for more stories about turning down $200,000. And yeah, consider, speaking of money, consider subscribing to Shack News Mercury for as little as $1 a month. You can support us, and it actually scales up to $1,000 a year. So it's all about that tier life. So yeah, stay tuned. We got Sea of Thieves coming up real soon.